Hello, viewers. Today I decided I'm going to make a sword for Dave Chappelle. Weird flex, I know, but let me explain. The man makes funny jokes. Well, maybe I should elaborate a little bit more. The man has made it his life's work to give you an euphoric burst of happiness so that whatever you got going on in your life doesn't seem quite so bad. You can't get more humanitarian than that. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. I don't know if Chappelle is a gambling man, but every time you go on stage, you take the chance that people will like the jokes coming out of your mouth. Everyone's staring at you, waiting for you to up. That is terrifying. You don't get a second chance to deliver a punchline. You can't be fumbling over your words or thinking about what to say next. The man is extremely talented. No one is born with that kind of talent. You learn it through experience and empathy. Dave knows people. The amount of thought and preparation that goes into his jokes is borderline scientific. He has broken down barricades of racism by exposing how ridiculous and absurd it is. He has given a whole generation the ability to reach out to each other and laugh at their differences out of humor instead of spite. The saying goes, those that know do, those that understand teach. And Dave has taught us all how to laugh. That makes him a modern day philosopher in my book. Now, what am I getting out of this? Nothing. As a fan, I just want to let him know that we appreciate everything that he's contributed to our culture. And from the top looking down, you don't share that kind of stage with very many peers. So you hear it less often than you think. Thank you.
All right, let's get started. We're in Adobe Illustrator. I did all of my line work using this program because I intend to use a CNC table to cut the pieces. All of the dark spaces are going to be recessed and all of the white spaces are going to be raised. So I plan on doing this in several different pieces. And this is just a brief look at what this would look like when it's all assembled. Nice. All right, here's my CNC table. It's a 4-foot by 8-foot 4-axis machine. Bought it from Alibaba somewhere in China. Now, the first thing you do when you have one of these is you need to home your machine. So each, the X, Y, and Z axis, you have to home each one of them so that the machine knows its physical limits. Now, what I'm using here is a piece of 3/4 inch MDF, medium density fiberboard. Picked it up at Home Depot, and this is just used, I'm using this as a test model, just for proof of concept to make sure that everything cuts properly and that I don't have any problems with the actual machining. I'm using a 1/8 inch upcut spiral bit. I know the camera is taking a little while to focus on this. That is a 1/4 inch shank with 1/8 of an inch taper. Right now I'm zeroing the tool to the center of my project. And we'll let it rip. Always keep a tidy workspace. The cuts look fine. I can see my tabs held in place to keep the materials from bouncing around after they're set free from with the tool. All in all, I'm actually pretty satisfied from the cut. Now to machine the other side. Zeroing it to the center of the material again. Alright, let's go ahead and take this thing out and see what we have here. Pretty nice. I am satisfied with the size of it, the heft of it. Now, my finished product will not be as thick. This is 3/4 inch. I will be using 1/2 inch aluminum. What I'm doing now is marking the taper of my blade. So this is all going to be grounded at an angle. What I'm using is an orbital sander, starting off with an 80 grit sandpaper. Just trying to get that nice and smooth and even and rough. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time wasting on just a test model. Just cleaning up some of the edges and burrs. Cool deal, Lucille. I'm going to use these tools to give it a stippled effect on the metal. And I just kind of want to make sure that all this effort for this is going to be worth it. And just give it a slightly textured surface instead of just a straight shiny one. Alright, now that we added some color to it, you can kind of see the stippled effect a little better. Well, let's go ahead and keep going at it. We'll kind of give this a little bit more realism. That way I'm not sitting with a big chunk of brown doo-doo looking sword. All in all, I have to say, proof of concept looks pretty good. We're just shy of 48 inches, which is actually important for whenever I want to shift this dang thing. Now on that centerpiece, I'll end up doing a laser etch of his face, and also on the sides. I do see that some of my points do not line up here. That is actually supposed to nest in there pretty close, but I'll have to tweak on the file a little bit to see why that was so far off. Right here, I do plan on doing some acid etching. Use some finials, some leaves, something just to add a little bit more class to it. And all of the raised lettering, I will use a mirror gold acrylic that will be laser cut. Alright, here's our stock of sheet, 6061 aluminum. In you go. Marking my center lines to make sure when I flip this thing, everything will be nice and even. And I'm using a 3-flute upcut for aluminum. I'll go ahead and set my zeros again. And center it on my project. Load my program code and get my air to the air is to clear the chips, so that way you're not recutting the same chips and creating friction and heat or binding your bit in a recess. Cutting out my accent pieces out of 1/4 inch material. Here we go. For the next step, I want to make sure that I have my letters stenciled out. So I'm going to clean this thing really good with denatured alcohol. And I am an Acme Sign Company, which cut the decals for me. And I'm going to apply them to the metal. And I'm going to use this basically as a template for my stippling. That way I know where my letters are going to go. I want the letters to be flat, so when they adhere to it, they won't have any gaps in the adhesive. Making sure this thing is straight and level is always paramount. We call this a hinge method. We always do decals this way. You start in the center. You do one side at a time instead of trying to do a whole decal at once. Keeps everything nice and in place and level. And holy shit, I turned into a white guy. Thanks, Jordan. All right, looks good. Now I'm doing my beveled edge, marking that out. Now I'm going to use an angle grinder with a specified aluminum bit. not a bit, an aluminum disc. Now that thing that you see on the side is a cutting wax, and cutting aluminum without it is actually shooting yourself in the foot. What happens is that the aluminum is soft and it clogs up the grinding disc.
All right, so here's my line. I drew with a marker. I'm pretty close on it. Need to tighten it up just a little bit. But on my side profile, I'm thinner here than I am over here. I need to work on that a little bit.
Believe it or not, grinding is probably one of my most favorite things about making swords. There's something about it. Some people like, cutting grass or other monotonous tasks. To me, the vibration, and it's satisfying that you're getting something done, even though it's a little at a time. And shaping the metal, I think, is fun. After doing some aggressive cutting with a cutting disc, I'm using a flap disc to kind of smooth things out. And this is how much aluminum is left in the air and on the table after that. Clean all that up. More like just getting it out of my way. Alright, for the next stippling part, I created some guards. That way I don't mess up my clean edges by accidentally hitting that. It's a piece of aluminum bent into like a 1/2 inch trim, and we're just going to tape this along our edges that we don't want to hit. Protection's important, and so are the eyes. This process took a very long time, a couple days in fact. It's actually very tedious, and you have to hold a lot of tension on the tool to make sure that it doesn't slide off and go in a different direction and hit something you're not wanting to. So the forearms get a very good workout on this part of the project. And I'm using the cutting wax here as well, just to keep my burrs from getting clogged up. Alright, we're going to start our final polishing. Well, not final. The start of polishing. I'm going to start this with a 120 grit sandpaper. Try to get as many of the scratches out as I can from the coarse abrasives that I used to shape the blade. So we're going to work this down from 120, 320, I think 500, 600, and 1200. And I'll end it with a 3000 grit. This process does take a while, and to me is the most tedious part of it. Believe it or not, this part is my least favorite. It's just because if you don't get it right the first time, you got to go back and start it all over. So it's very important that you take your time on this step. Now watch your end, right there in the corner. This is what happens to my tools. I end up spending 30 minutes looking for this. What is he thinking? That. I spent 30 minutes looking for that until I found it somewhere in his clubhouse, which he forgot, of course, where he put it. I'm moving up to some of the higher grit sandpapers. So with this, you have to have a way to get the dust out. So you do it wet, and it helps wick the dust and the particles away. I'm going to change over to a hook and loop pad. That way it doesn't slide with all the moisture. And those are my various grits of sandpaper: 3000, 5000, 10,000. Using just warm soapy water to get all that yucky yuck off of it. Alright, putting on my compound to kind of give it a light buff before I put it on the buffing wheel. Kind of smooths everything out, makes it have the same consistency. Alright, almost there. Alright, we're going to start with the red compound. It's used for a more aggressive cutting. And we're going to do that on our tough wheel. Anytime you're doing any kind of buffing, you want a little amount of compound and just apply it frequently. If you cake that up pretty bad, you end up with a bunch of product on your blade that could easily burn. But nice mirror finish there. And you just work that all the way down your blade. Now with aluminum especially, you want to set your wheel to the lower settings. If you spin it higher than certain RPMs, you actually will burn the blade. I learned that hard way on a couple of previous projects. I kept wondering why my finish was getting marred, and that is the reason. So just take your time and use a slower speed, and you'll come out with better results. So you have the side that was polished versus the side that's not polished. Cleaning off all of that compound. Warm soapy water is always my friend. There's really no easy way to get that crap off. It's just a little bit of elbow grease with microfiber cloth. Alright, now we're going to use a white compound, which is for finishing, and I'm going to use it on the flannel disc. It's softer, it's able to get into the contours a little bit better. Hunting tools again. Where's my damn towel? Thanks, Rand. See the reflection there. Got him.